In the beginning of the new year, most, if not all of us, have hopes of blessing in the upcoming year. But we also know that hardships are inevitable and that hardships are a part of life. And I think we may have a misunderstanding of hardship. And what I mean by that is when you think of the word hardship, what words come to mind? And so when I think of the word hardship, the words that come to mind are one, that there's something that we try to avoid, right? And that not just avoid, but even I would say that hardships are something we try to run away from. But I don't think that's a correct way to think about hardship when you look at the Bible. And for the next few weeks, we are going to be looking and studying through the life of Joseph to see what the Bible has to say about hardship. Again, because as much as we want blessing in our lives, we know that hardships will come. And actually, it may be that the blessings come through the hardships. And so, having said that as an introduction, this morning we're going to read Genesis chapter 37 in its entirety, verses 1 to 36. This is the Word of God. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us, or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him. But his father kept the saying in mind. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." And he said to him, "Here I am." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock." And the man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, so that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore. And they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat. And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and I, where shall I go?" And they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. This is the word of the Lord. Many people hope that their children will become like Joseph. I told you last week that even our own Pastor Joe was named after the Joseph in the Bible in Genesis 37. A lot of people, they hope that their children will become like Joseph. Another person that parents want their children to be like is David. But it's important to remember that Joseph would not be Joseph without the hardships that he endured. And he endured at least 13 years of hardship. He's 17 when this story takes place. And when he rules over Egypt, second to Pharaoh, he's 30 years old. And then it takes 7 years after that when he actually meets his brothers. So 20 years before he meets his brothers again, but 13 years of hardship. And even David, before he becomes king, he's fleeing from Saul. Saul is trying to kill him. And David would not be David. He would not be the king that he was if he didn't endure hardship. I think a lot of times people want to become Joseph and they want to become a person like David, but they don't want the hardship. And it's important that you know and that you remember that it's not possible to become a Joseph or a David, or maybe it's not really possible to become great without enduring hardship. Because I think we would all agree that it's hardship that develops character. Not only character, but it's hardship that even develops faith, right? You see this in the life of Joseph, and today is the beginning of the story of the life of Joseph. If nothing else, Genesis chapter 37 has to make you feel good about yourself, I think. Because we're all messed up. There's nobody in this room that is not messed up. I know that we like to pretend that we're not, and we come to church and in front of other people, and we do our best to hide our problems. But the truth is, we all have problems. It's just, we all are messed up, and I think we'd all agree that our families are messed up. I mean, to one extent or another, right, we would all agree that our families are messed up. But your family is probably not as messed up as Jacob's family. This is a really bad family. This family has real problems. I mean, real problems. This is not a made-up story. I mean, this is a real story. This is a real family. And if you think that you're messed up, and if you think your family is messed up, you have hope. Because probably the truth is your family is not as messed up as Jacob's family. And still God is able to use Jacob's family for his purpose, to build his kingdom, and to bring his salvation into the world. It's amazing, right? It has to give you, in a twisted sense, right? It has to give you some hope. Maybe God can use me. You know, maybe my life isn't too messed up. There are a few things, I think, that we can learn from today's story, from the Bible, and they're in your bulletin. I put them on the PowerPoint. I'm going to spend most of my time this morning on the last point, but I'm just going to go through the first four. The first thing that you can learn from today's story is that God is working even when you don't realize it. Right? I see most of you nodding your head, so I can move on to point two, right? So God is working even when you don't realize it. Two, many times you don't understand what God is doing. Many times, and I'd actually say probably most of the time, you don't understand what God is doing. You may think that you understand what God is doing, but you probably don't really understand what God is doing. Number three, and again, these all kind of are similar. They go together. But what God is doing is beyond your understanding. So if you don't understand what God is doing, right, it's because what God is doing is really beyond your understanding. And this is true not only of this story. I think this is true of the entire Bible. And again, remember during the season of Advent, we were looking at the genealogy of Jesus. Again, there's no way that those people in the genealogy of Jesus knew that God was bringing his kingdom, his salvation into the world through them. They just had no idea. It was completely beyond their understanding. Even when they died, they didn't understand how God was using them. What God is doing is beyond your understanding. And to me, that's really comforting. It's comforting that God is doing more than I realize. And I've said this before. I think worship changes your life. I really do. I think one of the most important things that you will do in your life is to worship. And I said this last week. I think one of the most important things that we as parents can teach our children is how to worship. I think God is doing so much more in and through worship than we see, realize, and understand. I think there's real spiritual warfare that happens in worship. I think God is changing and transforming our lives in worship. I think God is even changing the world through worship. Now again, I don't understand it, but I do believe that God is doing more than we can understand. And I think that's incredible. And I think you see that in the Bible. So God is doing more than you realize. So not only can you not understand it, not only is it beyond your understanding, but it's more than you realize. And last, nobody is able to stop what God is doing. Nothing, nobody, no one is able to stop what God is doing. And you see this especially in today's story. But as I read through the story, I think sometimes we think that God is limited by things in our lives. Oh God, you can't use me because this happened to me, or I did this. I think a lot of times we limit God. But if nothing else, this story, the story of Joseph in Genesis 37, it shows us that God is not limited. And there's three groups of people. If you were Joseph, you could have made at least three excuses to God. And you said, God, it's this person's fault that this happens in my life. A lot of times we blame other people for our lives. Joseph, he could have blamed people. Like, he could have made excuses and just say that, God, you can't use me. But there's at least three groups of people that I think that Joseph could have blamed. And I think it's common that people blame and we make excuses and telling God, what happened is just too bad. So the first person I think that Joseph could have blamed is his father, Jacob. Now Jacob is the son of Isaac, right? Isaac had twin sons, Jacob and Esau, remember? And so Jacob has 12 sons. And God changes Jacob's name to Israel. And it's from the 12 sons, from his 12 sons, that come the 12 tribes of Israel. But we're told that Joseph's brothers hate him. They not only hate him, but we're told that they hate him even more. And we're told that they're jealous of him. But listen closely why they hate him. First of all, one of the reasons they hate him is because in verse 2, we're told that Joseph brought a bad report of his brothers to their father. He was a tattletale. Nobody likes a tattletale, especially among siblings. Right? Nobody. I have a great story. But you all have stories. You all have stories in your own family. Probably your siblings, right? I have great stories. Great stories. Too good. So when I was in youth group, when I was in middle school, I hated church. It was pure punishment for me. The church was like probably 30 minutes away, and they would drive to my house every Friday to pick me up. But I hated church. It was punishment for me. When I meet middle school and high school kids that like church, I just don't understand them. I look at them, I'm like, what's wrong with you? But when I meet kids that don't like church, when I meet kids at retreat that don't want to be at retreat, I'm like, come, I understand you. We can talk, but I just don't understand people that like church because I didn't like church. And I'll tell you how much I didn't like church. One Friday, my friend invited me to go to a Seattle Mariners game. So should I ask my parents if I could go to a Seattle Mariners game on Friday? It's pointless. There's no reason for me to ask my parents if I can go to a Seattle Mariners game on Friday because the answer is going to be, no, you have to go to church, right? So it's just pointless. But I thought, okay, church starts at 6, it ends about 9, you get home at 10 o'clock. Like, you know what? Mariners game starts at 7 again. You know what? So I can't. So what I did is the church bus came to pick me up and I hid. And I pretended I wasn't home and I just went to the Mariners game. And my parents just thought I was at church. And I went to the Mariners game, but I went into extra innings. And I didn't get home until like 11:30. And nobody knew where I was because I didn't tell anyone. my parents, they called everybody. They called everybody at church, all my friends. I got to church the next Sunday. Everyone's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Because they called my brother thought I was dead. So I come into the house, and I know I'm in trouble. I mean, I'm not that stupid. I know I'm in trouble. I walk into the house. My parents look at me, and they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yes." Like, go downstairs to your brother. He's been crying all night because he thinks you're dead. So I go downstairs to my brother, and I look at him, and I'm like, "You weenie. Like, you're supposed to cover for me. Like, if I'm not, like, you're not supposed to cry. Like, you're supposed to lie. Like, you're supposed to cover for me, but you're crying." I'm like, "You're such a weenie." My brother was a great brother. Joseph, he tattled on his brothers. No brothers. No siblings like other siblings that tattle. If nothing else, they would dislike Joseph, right? So one, they hate Joseph because he tattles. It doesn't help that in verse 12, basically his dad sends him out to spy on his brothers, right? And to tattle. Hey, go and check on your brothers and tell me if they're doing everything good. I mean, his dad's not helping him. And you would agree, so second, they hate Joseph because their father, Jacob, loved him more than any of his other brothers. And every child wants their parents' love. I have 4 children, and I kind of feel like they always want your attention. They all want, and Jacob's got 12 sons. It's just like, we're told that Joseph is his favorite. He's the favored son. And so it's not hard to understand, why his brothers hated him. And we're told that they were jealous of him. They wanted to be like him, right? And why? Because they wanted to be loved like he was loved. It's understandable. But the first person that Joseph could have blamed for his life, when he was being sold to slavery, when he was serving in Egypt, when he was in jail, he could have sat there and he could have blamed his dad. I would have. Why did his brothers hate him? It's not his fault. He didn't ask to be the favorite, right? He didn't ask to be his dad's favorite. I mean, honestly, Jacob's not a very smart dad. At least if you have a favorite, at least don't show it. But the problem is, he not only has a favorite, but he makes it so obvious that all the brothers see it with the coat. Every time they see the coat, it reminds them that their dad doesn't love them as much as Joseph. Again, this family has to make you feel good. You might, when you think of yourself as a father, we all make mistakes. It's like, oh man. I mean, it just seems so obvious that what Jacob is doing is bad. But just think of it. The reason his brothers hated him isn't really because of what he did. It's because of his dad. He could have blamed his dad. And sometimes we do this. We blame our parents for our lives. Oh, my dad did this to my mom did this to me. And it's true. And those of us who are parents, we know there's no perfect parent. Parents are going to mess up. Joseph, he could have blamed his dad. The second person, or the group of people that he could have blamed, is he could have blamed his brothers. He could have blamed his brothers. He could have said, it's because of my brothers. My brothers, you have to understand, these are very bad people. I know a lot of you just kind of read the story and move on. They wanted to kill him. Okay, this is bad. Not just kill him, but we call this first-degree murder in America. First-degree murder is premeditated. The difference between first-degree and second-degree murder is that first-degree murder is you have a plan. You have it planned out ahead of time. right? Second-degree murder, maybe out of anger. Just a spur of the moment, you kill somebody. That's wrong too. But what's even worse is when you've planned it out in your head. This is the worst kind of killing or murder. And this is what his brothers were trying to do to him. Okay. So we're told in verse 20, let me read it. They said, "Let us kill him and throw him into the pits, and then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him." Okay? That's first-degree murder. But then Reuben, and now Reuben is the oldest of the brothers. Reuben says, "No. Just throw him in the pit. Just put him in the pit." And I know that you probably think, wow, Reuben's a good man. And it's better than going along with him. But you know, what would have made Reuben a good man is if he said, "No, it's all wrong." Like, just don't touch, it's all wrong. But he doesn't even say it's all wrong. He just throw him into the pit. And you probably think he's a good guy. But remember we're told that Reuben comes back to the pit after the brothers sell him, right? And they see that Joseph's not there and he rips his clothes. Did you listen to what he says? Listen. He says, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Is he worried about Joseph? He doesn't care about Joseph. He's not like, "Oh no, what happened to Joseph? Where's Joseph going to go?" He's not doing this for Joseph. It's all for him. See, the thing with Reuben is he slept with one of his father's concubines. He went into his father's bed with one of his father's concubines. And because of that, his father did not like him. He was trying to protect his name. He was trying to maybe get back into his father's good graces. Listen to what he says. "Where shall I go? My dad's going to be mad at me. He's going to blame me because I'm the oldest." He doesn't care about Joseph. He's not a good guy. Okay, so all the brothers say, "Let's kill him." Reuben, you think he's a good guy, but actually I don't think he's a very good guy. But then there's Judah. Now this is important. This is Judah. Judah, out of all 12 sons of Israel, Judah is the one who becomes the descendant of Jesus Christ. Right? Remember the genealogy of Jesus Christ? This is the Judah. Now you would think that you'd have to be a good person, right, to be chosen. This is what Judah says. He's a great leader. He says, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Let us just sell him to the Ishmaelites, for he is our brother." You know, let's just sell him. I mean, and then we're told all his brothers listened to him. They're all crooked. They're all terrible. They're all terrible. You would think that one of the 11 would say, "Hey guys, you know, this has been funny, but we can't really do this." Right? You would think that one of them would say, "Hey, I know it's fun to think about it, but come on, like, none of them, no one, not the oldest, Reuben, not the chosen one, Judah, none of the brothers actually say, 'Hey guys, let's not do this.'" If you're Joseph, what's amazing about this story too, I don't know if you kind of read the details. His dad says, "Hey, go and check up on your brothers." And his dad knows his sons. First of all his brothers go to work, but who doesn't go to work? Joseph. Come on, wouldn't that make you mad? If you were one of the brothers and your dad made everybody work and go to the field, but not Joseph. Joseph gets to stay home. But then Jacob knows his sons, and he knows his sons are not the hardest workers. He knows it. And that's why he says, "Hey, go and check up on them and tell me what they're doing." Not a good move. Not a good move to begin with. But then Joseph goes to Shechem, and they're not there. And then we're told in verse 15, a man found him. A man found him, and a man told him that they went to Dothan. Imagine if this man never showed up in Joseph's life. His life would never have been the same. Like, he would never, none of this would have happened to him. This nameless man comes into his life and says, hey, they went to Dothan. But then, Joseph could have just went back to his dad. Right? He went to Shechem. His brothers weren't there. He could have just went home to his dad and said, hey, Dad, I went to Shechem. They're not there. But no. He has to go, and he has to find his brothers at Dothan. He goes, and now if you're Joseph, right, they throw him into the pit. Now if you're Joseph, he's probably been picked on his whole life, behind his dad's back, because his brothers don't like him. So he's probably in the pit like, okay, guys, this is funny. Like, any time, right, you can let me out. They're so bad that after they threw him in the pit, do you know what they did? After they threw him in the pit, we're told that in verse 25, they sat down to eat. And these are great guys. I mean, these are just great guys. They take his brother, they throw him to the pit. Hey, guys, I'm hungry. Let's eat. Now, Joseph probably, hey, guys, this is funny. You can let me out at any time. The thing is, he never hears Reuben trying to protect him. Because, remember, Joseph isn't there yet. Right? They're conspiring when Reuben says, hey, guys, just throw him into the pit. But while he's in the pit, I'm sure he hears the conversations that his brother's having. And he hears Judah. He knows whose idea it is to sell him as a slave. Right? And he hears them talking, hey, let's just sell him as a slave. And if you're Joseph, this isn't funny anymore. This is kind of scary. And he knows that it's Judah. And this is important because when his brothers come to Egypt, Judah has a talk with Joseph. And if you're Joseph, you remember Judah. Judah's the one that said, let's sell this guy. They bring him out of the pit, and we're told they sell him. If you look later, though, the brothers say, God is punishing us because our brother begged us. He begged us, and we did not listen to him. They bring him out of the pit, and now it's just fear. And Joseph begs his brothers for his life. Begs his brothers for his life. And they sell him anyways. Maybe you've run into rotten people. Maybe bad things have happened to you. No, I don't think, not like this. And you know what? Joseph could have just given up on God. Forget it, God. Do you know what they did to me? And he could just blame his brothers. We could blame, they hurt me. God, they hurt me. The last person Joseph could have blamed, he could have just blamed himself. Joseph didn't help his cause. Okay, his dad probably wasn't the smartest dad. Right? But Joseph did not help his cause. In school, if you ever known a person, after an exam, they'll say, hey, what'd you get on the test? I always dislike people like that. Because it's none of your business. Like, why do you care what I got on the test? And really what they want to tell me is what they got on the test. Right? Hey, what'd you get on the test? Hey, you want to know what I got on the test? No. If I wanted to know what you got on the test, I would ask you. Right? If I wanted to know, I'd ask you. But what they want to do is they want to brag. Right? They want to tell me how smart they are. Hey, students, don't ever tell somebody what grade you got. Nobody wants to know. Okay, and I was thinking about this last night. The only reason you should ask somebody else their grade is if you need help and you want them to tutor you. If you want to find the smartest person in the class to tutor you, that's the only reason you should ask somebody what their grade is. Because what they got, it doesn't matter. It's none of your business. But I hate people. Hey, you want to know what I got on the test? No? Hey, I'll tell you anyways, I got 99. I hate you, man. Really, I don't care. You're so annoying. Right? You're so annoying. That's Joseph. Hey, guys, I had a dream. You want to know what my dream is? No. Hey, let me tell you anyway. Like, my sheep, it rose up, and you bowed down to mine. I mean, hey, guys, I had another dream. You want to hear it? No. Okay, I'm going to tell you anyway. Like, the sun, the moon, the stars, they're bowing down to me. Like, oh, my gosh. Like, what an idiot. I mean, I'm sorry to say, like, what an idiot. Oh, my gosh. He didn't help himself. You would agree? He did not help himself. You know, looking back, he could have said, you know what? I was pretty stupid. If only I didn't do that. How many times have you said that to yourself? I was so stupid. If only I didn't do that. And you know what you do? You limit God. Oh, because I did that? Oh, that's why. That's why my life is what it is. That's why this, that's why God can't use me. It's not true. I got to close. None of this is true. Now, don't get me wrong. I do want to say this. Did God want his brothers to sell him into slavery? Was that God's will? I'll say no. It's not God's will to hate. You would agree? It's nothing. Hey, Joseph's brothers should be a warning to you about how dangerous hatred is. You should not hold hatred in your heart. This is a real warning. Also, they're a warning about how dangerous jealousy is. This should remind you of 2 commandments. Thou shalt not murder, right? And that's hatred. And thou shalt not covet. And you think it's the last commandment, so it's no big deal. I won't covet. Covet, jealousy, desiring what's not yours. What made Joseph's brothers do what they did? They were covetous. And then they stole. If you sell something that doesn't belong to you and get money for it, you'd agree that's selling? They sold Joseph. Joseph isn't theirs. They broke the 6th commandment, they broke the 8th commandment, and they broke the 10th commandment. If they only kept the 10th commandment, they wouldn't have broken the 6th or the 8th. It's a warning against the dangers of hatred and jealousy. However, so I'll say it's not God's will. I will say this, God is not limited by human sin and evil. God is not limited by human sin and evil. God is not limited by what your parents did to you. And for some people, their parents did great wrong to them. And I don't want to minimize that. But I will say this, God is not limited by what your parents did to you. They're not. God is not limited by it. God is not limited by what other people did to you. And God definitely isn't limited by what you did to yourself. God is sovereign. God is sovereign. In the end, I'm going to end by saying this. This story, it's interesting. It's not a story about Joseph. It's a story about Jacob, right? Because look at verse 2. These are the generations of Jacob. A lot of people think that this story is about Joseph. It's not about Joseph. It's about how God uses one person to bring his salvation into the world. God uses Joseph to save Israel, to save Jacob and his family. The story isn't about Joseph. It's about how God uses one man to save the world, to save a people for himself. That sounds like Jesus, right? This story is kind of similar to Jesus. How much did they sell Joseph for? 20 pieces of silver? Who was sold for silver? Jesus. They shed blood. After they sell their brother, right, they have to cover what they did. So what do? They slaughter. We're told they slaughter. They don't kill. Slaughter. When does the Bible use the word slaughter? For sacrifice. They slaughter a goat and they dip the robe in its blood. Do you know that when you give a sin offering, you slaughter the animal and the priest dips his finger in the blood and sprinkles it on the altar? How do they try to cover their sin? They slaughter an animal. How does God cover sin? God covers our sin through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. And this is a story about how God uses one man. Even through the hardships and through what his parents did and his brother, and even what he did to himself. But God is sovereign. God is able to. God is not limited by human sin and evil. Right? That God is able to work all things together for good. Would you pray with me as we close today?